This morning's reading is from Luke chapter 8. They sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and he fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains, and he had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. And the demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. I want to begin this morning by showing you a painting. I am a very visual learner, so if this helps you, it helps me. This is called the Gerasene Demoniac. It's also on the front of your bulletin if you would like to look at that. This was painted in 1653 by the French Baroque artist Sébastien Bourdon. You could also see this painting in the Louvre if you ever find yourself in France. But this painting captures the scene that we just read in the Gospel of Luke with some striking details that vividly brings this story to life. And also in ways that invites us to ask some reflective questions. And let me just point out a few things in the painting, right? Front and center, right at the focal point, we see Jesus standing there, calm and commanding, his hand extended and pointing. Of course, right in front of him there on the ground, sharing center stage with him at his feet, is the possessed man. He's kind of crumpled up like he's fallen down, contorted, wild-eyed. Thankfully, the painter did not paint him totally naked, but he's mostly exposed. His fists are clenched. You can tell there's a battle that's been going on. Then in the distance, over on the left, it might be a little bit harder to see, but back in the background on the left, you see some pigs hurtling off a cliff into the water. And we expect to see these elements of the painting. These are the most vivid things that pop in our minds when we read the story. But Bourdon also includes other characters around the edge of his painting. On the right, 3 men are staring at the scene. They're visibly kind of disturbed, but also they're like aloof. They're not getting involved. There's this visual space between them and what's happening with Jesus and the man. On the left, there appears to be 2 younger boys who are running up the hill away from the lake. They almost look like they're stumbling and falling over each other as they're trying to get away. And we'll return in more detail to these characters later. But I've titled today's sermon for you, Messy Miracles. Because that's what this story describes. Perhaps more than any other miracle that we have in the Gospels of Jesus, this one is really messy. It's not neat or tidy or pretty. The man in need of curing, he's in one of the messiest states of anyone in the Gospels. He's not just a simple blind guy or a paralyzed man. He's demonized by what is self-proclaimed a legion of demons, which is a reference to a Roman military unit. There's a whole lot going on inside this man. And they've turned this man into what the kids these days might call a hot mess. But the deliverance results in a huge mess all its own. Mark's account of this tells us that these herd of pigs numbered about 2,000. I've never seen 2,000 pigs. I don't really want to see 2,000 pigs. I definitely don't want to see 2,000 pigs drowned and bobbing in a lake. Like, if that's not the biggest mess that Jesus left in the wake of doing his ministry, I don't know what is. But today for us, I believe through this messy miracle that God's invitation to us is to make room for the miraculous and messy work of Jesus. He's inviting us to make room for the miraculous and messy work of Jesus. Because when Jesus shows up, when he really shows up, he doesn't just heal like polite illnesses or tweak our religious habits. He confronts evil, he shatters isolation, he restores what was lost, and in the process, he sometimes disturbs the status quo that we've grown comfortable with. So I want to take a look at some of these characters. And first, I want to point out the whole problem that starts this whole scene with this man. And this problem is that the mission of the demonic is to dehumanize. The mission of anything demonic is to dehumanize. The first thing that we learn about this man, according to Luke, is that he no longer lives like a man, like a human being. He's naked and exposed. He lives among the tombs. He's essentially homeless. While not specifically mentioned, we can assume that he's malnourished. Like, what's he been eating? Mark's telling, again, of this story has some other details and includes details about self-harm. He says that day and night this man would cry out and would cut himself with stones. He's ostracized. He is just outcast. He has no home. He has no family. He has no community. He has no hope. And in short, he has been dehumanized. He is now living in a state that is less than human. And as a human being, created in the divine image of God, his image-bearing dignity has just been stripped from him. And this is what the powers of evil do. Anytime you see this happening, anything that is dehumanizing, I think you can rightly assume that it is demonic in nature and origin. And it doesn't matter what we call it, whether we call it spiritual warfare or systemic injustice or trauma, addiction, mental illness, poverty, racism, human trafficking, or war, whatever we call it, it all has the same aim: to distort, to reduce, to erase the God-given image in a person. And so if the mission of the demonic is to dehumanize, my question for us is simply, can we open our eyes and just even answer for ourselves, how are people being dehumanized in our community? Do we see anything going on and happening that we say, oh, this is dehumanizing to them. This is demonic in nature. Like, who are the ones in our community, they're, quote, living among the tombs? That maybe you're literally homeless. Are they familyless, communityless, loveless, hopeless, suffering in any number of ways? I know I've mentioned this before. I know I've mentioned it in sermons. I've probably mentioned it in conversations that some of us have had one-on-one as well. But a question that the Holy Spirit keeps bringing to my mind whenever I think and pray about us and Burns is this, which is, what is God's purpose for us being geographically located here in South Augusta? What is God's purpose in that? Because I don't believe that our geographical location is incidental to our mission. I fully believe this is the way God works, that where we are matters. Where we are is meant to give shape to our mission and calling by God. And as I pray for our community, I can't help but believe that what's needed here more and more are thriving, strong, healthy, Jesus-centric churches that care for people as holistically as we can. Churches that restore the image-bearing dignity to those around us who have had it stripped from them. I think we need more churches like that. And specifically, I've mentioned this before as well, but specifically by one of the most dehumanizing forces, which is poverty. And I've learned something recently, specifically about poverty in our immediate area, that I'd like to share with you. I think just that helps make this more tangible. Angela and I are part of a group that meets monthly over lunch for relationship, prayer, and cooperation. It's hosted at the Garrett's house. It's been going on for like 20 years or more than 20 years. It's called the South Augusta Pastors Alliance. And we just gather and we talk and we hear what's going on and we pray for one another in our churches and the broader community, and we partner together in different ways. One of the long-standing members of this group is former Mayor Deke Copenhaver, not a pastor, but he is central to this group. And he shared with us a statistic that has really moved my heart. And this is what is called the Alice threshold. I don't know if you've ever heard this term. This is newer for me, but the Alice threshold. And it's an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And what this means is that these are households that earn above the federal poverty line, yet they struggle to afford basic expenses, right? These Alice households, they span all races, ages, ethnicities, and abilities, though households are of color are disproportionately Alice. These households include workers who are working 2 or more jobs and still can't pay their bills. These include workers their wages just cannot keep up with the rising costs of goods and services. They include family members who need care and assistance, which makes it harder for their caregivers to find adequate work when you're trying to care for someone at home, but also go out and work your second job. In short, these are families and households that live paycheck to paycheck and are forced to make impossible choices all the time. Do we pay the rent or do we buy food? Do we receive medical care or do we pay for child care? Do we pay the utility bills or do we put gas in our car? And here's the stats that are relevant to us. The first is that the national average is that 42% of U.S. households live beneath the Alice threshold. That in and of itself is heartbreaking. Now, Georgia, 45% of Georgia households live beneath the Alice threshold. For Richmond County, that jumps to 55% of households in Richmond County live beneath the Alice threshold. More than half of our neighbors right here live beneath the Alice threshold and are struggling like this, week in and week out, month in, month out. And I just hold those numbers before you just to say the mission of the demonic is to dehumanize. But there's good news. Again, we're reading the Gospels. So we get to some good news. And if the mission of the demonic is to dehumanize, the mission of Jesus is to rehumanize. This naked, malnourished, smelly homeless man comes running up to Jesus, and Jesus doesn't even flinch. Jesus, he comes towards him. He crosses cultural lines. This region of the Gerasenes, this is Gentile land. This was unclean territory, right, to a good Jew. Jesus was not afraid of the cultural and social discomfort that would come from this. But he engaged, and he speaks not just to the demons, but to the image of God that still resides in that man that he could see. I love that in the text, the way that it's put here, it says Jesus asks his name. I think that Jesus was asking, you, image of God in front of me, what is your name? Because there's nothing that makes a person feel more seen than when someone remembers and knows your name. You're not just a number. You're not just one of those Gentiles. You're not an outsider. You're not one of them. You're not just the Gerasene demoniac. Now, of course, this man didn't have ability at this moment to actually tell Jesus his name. I like to think that he did later. Once the demons were gone, I think Jesus asked him again, okay, so now, what's your name? And he's like, Tobias, or whatever, some good name. But he sees this man. And one of the things I love about Bourdon's painting, back to the painting, is what Bourdon does with the eyes. If we zoom in on Jesus and the man, the dehumanized man is looking up. His eyes are just fixed on Jesus. He's not looking back at the pigs. He's not looking at the other people. He's fixed on Jesus. And Jesus' eyes are looking directly back at that man. Like they are locked in. And in the painting, Jesus is the only one looking directly at the man. No one else is looking at him but Jesus. He's the only one who truly sees him. Even as his finger is pointing towards the water, if you notice his finger is like pointing towards the water in a gesture of command to the demons, his eyes are still fixed on that image bearer in front of him. And he's rehumanized. And at the end of the story, what do we see? The man is clothed. He is in his right mind. I love that phrase. He's sitting at the feet of Jesus when the people show up. This is a posture of a disciple. Like, what were they talking about? I'm really mad at Luke for not including some of that. And then the man is commissioned. He's sent out to go tell his story. He wants to go with Jesus, but Jesus says, nope, go home and tell everybody how much God has done for you. And so he does, and he becomes, scholars refer to this man as the first missionary out into Gentile territory. A witness not only in his own town, but again, Mark includes more details. This is he proclaims what Jesus did in the entire region of the Decapolis. This area of like 10 cities that are located on this eastern frontier of the Roman Empire. This man is just making the circuit. Jesus doesn't just heal the man. He doesn't just cure the man. He restores his humanity. And so again, if we think about our community, the question is, what does Jesus want to do for people in our community? If we even think about the 55% of our neighbors who are living beneath the Alice threshold, what might Jesus want to do for them? Sure, all of that is a complicated problem, and I'm not assuming that I know the answers to that, and I'm not assuming that there's any like quick silver bullet fix to that. But I know that Jesus wants to rehumanize them. However, that has stripped away their dignity as image bearers of God, Jesus wants to restore that image to them. And for us at Burns, as far as what the details of that might look like, I think God has some purpose for us there. But whatever we might actually do to partner with Jesus, I just think that's something that we collectively need to like seek the Lord about and co-discern together. Jesus, what are you doing to rehumanize people in our community, how might you be inviting us as a church to partner with you? Because when I look at this painting, can we go back to the one as Jesus and the guy? When I see this painting, I keep picturing that man as our community. I keep picturing that man as Richmond County, as South Augusta, where Jesus is standing over our community like this, looking right at us, seeing everything and everyone, like standing tall and strong, compassionate, and willing to make a big old mess for the sake of a miracle. So the mission of the demonic is to dehumanize. Thanks be to God. The mission of Jesus is to rehumanize. And the third thing I want to focus on is these other characters in the story. And what I want to suggest is that the crowd can either reject or welcome the messy miracles. Crowd's got a decision to make. And here's where the story gets painfully real. For me, maybe for some of you as well. The townspeople who hear what happened, they show up, they see the man healed, they hear this wild story, they see the pigs bobbing in the water. And they don't deny the miracle. They don't question Jesus' power or authority, but they just can't handle what all of this might mean. And so as we zoom in on Bourdon's painting on the three men on the right, they're widely believed to be the owners of the pigs. Maybe they're just other townspeople who showed up. But look at their postures. One almost seems to be shielding his eyes. One seems to be kind of almost like leaning back, like away from it. One is kind of staring, but it almost looks like you can see his wheels turning, like he's calculating the cost of what he's seeing. And again, they're aloof, detached, keeping a safe distance. Then there are the two boys over on the left side. Again, it appears as though that they were down by the water, but then, like a herd of 2,000 pigs comes rushing down the hill, and like you're going to move quick. One of them looks like he's holding something that looks like it might be a fishing pole. They're visibly startled. They're scrambling up the hill, climbing over each other to get away from these stampeding pigs. And so verse 37, as we consider these people, right, I think Bourdon was thinking about this verse when he painted these people. Verse 37 is the most gut-wrenching in the whole passage to me. It says, then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. What is their collective response? They don't deny the miracle happened. They don't question his power or authority. Their collective response is to be afraid. And out of their fear, they beg Jesus to go away. Now, what are they afraid of? What exactly might they be afraid of? My guess is that they're afraid of more mess. They don't want any more miracles because they don't want any more messes. They don't want more disruption of the status quo, more disturbance of these quiet, simple lives they've been living. The owners and caretakers of the pigs, they just wanted to get back to doing their business. No one else wanted their livelihood turned upside down like theirs was. These boys, they're just trying to have like a quiet day fishing at the lake. And no one wanted to retrieve more dead animals out of the water. And I can empathize with this. I one time had to fish a dead goat out of our pond behind our house. It is nasty work. So I get it. But it's like they're asking, man, guys, what else is going to happen if this Jesus guy sticks around? What if he casts more demons out of more people? What if more livestock gets drowned into the water? What if our whole community gets turned upside down? He's going to ruin everything. Can we just all keep it the same? Let's just Just keep it the same. Just let us go on with our lives. But then this last sentence of verse 37 is where it really breaks my heart. Right? Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got in the boat and left. Let that break our hearts. So Jesus got in the boat and he left. He didn't argue with them. He didn't try to make some case for anything. He didn't try to point out other people that were suffering and had needs. Jesus just shrugged his shoulders and he left. Because they wanted him to. Because they resisted and resented the mess. And these other characters in Bourdon's painting are the visual embodiment of another question for us, which is, will we welcome the rehumanizing work of Jesus, or will we send him away? Will we, Burns, will we welcome the rehumanizing work of Jesus? Or out of our own fear, will we send him away? Because, it's okay, like, not everybody is ready for messy miracles. I get that. I really do. Because when people are restored, the status quo gets disrupted. Our quiet day at the lake gets noisy. It might cost us our economic assets. Our comfortable life, the way we liked it, gets disturbed. And sometimes something has to die. And it's quite frankly just very human nature to be like, thanks but no thanks. So if we feel that in ourselves, like, congratulations, you're human. But instead of sending Jesus away, I want to end by just encouraging us to respond the way that other people responded in other stories from the Gospels. There's other responses similar to this one, where Jesus was rejected and driven out of town. But there's other times where people respond differently. And I just want to read these to you, and a few of the little lines are going to be up on the screen, but just let these wash over you. And then I'm just going to give us a moment of silence. I just felt impelled by the Lord this week, after I read these, we're just going to sit silent before the Lord and just see what it is that he wants to say to us. And when it's time, I'll close us with a prayer, and we will worship some more. Immediately, the paralyzed man stood up in front of them, took the mat he had been lying on, and went home praising God. Everyone was amazed and gave praise to God. They were filled with awe and said, "We have seen remarkable things today." In another account of that, the paralyzed man got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this." After Jesus raised a widow's son back to life, they were all filled with awe and praised God. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." When Jesus defended healing a crippled woman on the Sabbath, all his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things he was doing. After healing Peter's mother-in-law, that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door and begged him not to leave, but to just let the sick touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. Please stand and pray with me. Jesus, don't let us send you away. Come even if it gets messy. Heal even if it costs us something. Stay even if it disrupts what we've grown used to. Rehumanize us, Jesus, and help us make room for others in our community to be rehumanized as well. Amen.